Turning now to part two of my exclusive exit interview with Congressman Trey Gowdy, who is opening up about everything from his trademark congressional grillings to what life brings beyond the Beltway. Watch. As you get ready to make this huge change in your life and leave Washington, one of the things that you'll be remembered for are some pretty testy exchanges that you had with people in this room that were sitting in. One of them was with Peter Strzok.
The "will stop it," you were speaking on behalf of the American people. Is that correct?
I don't recall writing that text.
Are you denying writing the text?
What I can tell you is that text in no way suggested that I or the FBI would take any action to influence the candidacy of
Agent Strzok, that is a fantastic answer to a question nobody asked.
If you want to represent what you said accurately, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't appreciate what was originally said being changed.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok. I don't appreciate having an FBI agent with an unprecedented level of animus working on two major investigations during 2016.
It didn't seem like you liked him too much.
You are a keen observer of human nature. There was a young lady sitting in front of my wife and I in church Sunday, whose father is Jim Lanneman, who was an FBI agent that I worked with for a number of years. When I think of the FBI, I think of people like Jim Lanneman and Steve Morley and Rod Kicklighter and Marshall Robichaux, who never, ever would have said or done the things that Peter Strzok said and did. So he is not reflective of the FBI that I worked with, and he is not reflective of the FBI that you and I deserve. My only real regret is that I wasn't tougher on him.
With regard to your exchanges with James Comey, you asked him about Hillary Clinton, whether or not she had sent classified emails, whether or not thousands of those appeared to have disappeared.
Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Secretary Clinton said her lawyers read every one of the emails and were overly inclusive. Did her lawyers read the email content individually?
No.
Well, in the interest of time, and because I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon, I'm not going to go through any more of the false statements.
You felt that he didn't do a thorough investigation of that, and you tried to get him to admit that in this room.
I want to be fair. It is always easy to look back and see what an investigator should have done. I am and will always be troubled by the fact that he was drafting an exoneration memo before 24 witnesses had been interviewed, including her. I will always be troubled by the fact his chief of staff said before her interview the only crime she could even theoretically be charged with is false statement. They'd already made up their minds. We will not survive if people think that there's a different justice system for the rich and the famous and the powerful than for some, private in the Army who may have also mishandled classified information. That's the beauty of us, is that the lady wears a blindfold.
Any regrets about going after anybody in this room, that you went too hard?
A couple, honestly. Not that I went too hard. It was a DHS hearing on visas, and there was a Second Amendment component to it. And it's not the woman's fault that they sent her. I never raised my voice. It's just in hindsight, was she the best witness for me to use to quiz about whether or not there's any other fact pattern where the government takes your right and then you have to petition? It is good to remember. Actually, it's helpful to have a wife and kids. And it is good to remember that other people have families too. And while this may be a sport for some of us, and we can go eat dinner that night and not get our feelings hurt, for some of the witnesses, this will be their only moment on YouTube. It'll be their only moment on television. And did you treat them fairly? And I think on balance, I did, or I tried to. And there are a couple of occasions that if I had to do it all over again, I would have asked the same questions, but I would have directed it to another witness.
You are leaving Washington, in part, you've suggested, because there's a frustration with the way things work here. What's the fundamental flaw?
Human nature. The fundamental flaw is that compromise has an incredibly small constituency, and we have bought into the notion that that you can make transformative change with 51% of your fellow citizens. Democracy is supposed to be tough. I mean, it's supposed to be tough, but I don't think it's supposed to be dysfunctional. And when I mention human nature, I would like to see us apply the same rules to our friends as we do to our enemies. If we were really curious about this administration doing something, we should be equally curious when our own administration does it. And when winning becomes the ultimate objective, then you become relativist, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing that.
What was the message of the midterms?
Oh boy, unmet expectations. Careful how you frame issues. That rhetoric matters. I think if you were to lay out the policy positions of Republicans, I think you would find maybe half and slightly more than half would say, "Okay, we're with you." When you factor in how we come across sometimes, I think particularly among female voters, they say, "I don't care how good your ideas are. You don't seem like a very good person." And I think that. So I think what you believe and how you communicate it are equally important, and we need to do a much better job on how we communicate.
So, any regrets about your decision to leave?
No, ma'am. No.
What's next for you?
We'll practice law in South Carolina with a firm that I have a history with, and more importantly, with two lawyers that I have worked with over the last couple of years, and I'm to the point in life, Martha, where who I do things with matters to me every bit as much as what I do. And when you find people of unassailable character that you enjoy being around, I'd rather dig ditches with Cindy and Sharia than practice law with people that I don't know and like and respect. So we're going to practice law. I'm going to shock the world and write another book with Tim Scott. So
about?
Hopefully about him. He's a lot more interesting than I am. But I think Tim wants me to write a book about how to ask questions, how to elicit the truth with asking questions, and I want him to write a book about his life and how his upbringing influences his political orthodoxy. We'll teach a class together. Timmy and I taught a class at Clemson. Poor students. He's great. He's the nicest teacher in the world, and
I'm not.
Well, I like the Socratic method, and I mean, these are freshmen in college. They don't know what the Socratic method is, and so I got to dial it back a little bit. But just be a better husband, better father. You know, both of our kids are at home now, and they're going to be starting their careers. I think our daughter's going to go to law school. God save us all if that happens. My son finished law school, but he's going to go into real estate. So just be a better husband, better father. I got, a third of life.
You said once that a federal judgeship checked all of your boxes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that still true?
It did. And Lindsay and Tim laid it right in front of me. They said, "We have 2 openings. Do you want it?" And the person who knows me the best in life, who also doesn't follow politics, is my wife. And she said, "You will be lonely. You like being around people. You like being an advocate." And I said, "Thanks, but no thanks." And then Lindsay called back and said, "You got to be kidding. This is what you always wanted. It's right here." And then Don McGahn called, and the president's former lawyer. "Are you sure?" And I said, "Not only am I sure, I'm at peace." And they filled it. The Lord has a sense of humor. They filled it with a guy that's been a friend of mine for 25 years that will be a fantastic judge, and it worked out great for both of us.
Ever run for office again?
Never. I will get back in politics if Tim Scott runs for president. And he says, "Look, I need you to go to Iowa or New Hampshire and knock on doors," which he probably won't because I'd hurt him. But to support, if John Ratcliffe ran for governor of Texas and said, "Come help me," I would, but you'll never see me on the ballot again.
Well, Trey Gowdy, thank you very much. We've enjoyed having you on the show and covering these stories with you, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, and I appreciate the professionalism and fairness with which you've always treated me.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.